Okay, good morning. I'm Frances Gibson, the moderator. We have 3 presenters, and they have 30 minutes each. So we've asked them to take about 5 minutes for questions and answers. So we're going to begin with Carl Abel. In his younger years, Carl Abel had many adventures as a cowboy, biologist, and oil-field worker. After visiting many grasslands around the world, he followed a lifelong dream with the purchase of their ranch in the northeast Texas in 2001. He began to rehabilitate the land and continued to learn about the management grasslands where he and his wife raised beef, cattle, goats, and 2 active sons, Kristen and William. Kelly is a former college Spanish instructor with a passion in outdoors education. She is inspired by her husband's work in transforming their overgrazed pastures into thriving native grassland. She created a Paris classroom to further plant seeds in future grassland stewards through young students, classes, and workshops. Their sons, ages 11 and 15, plays an active part in the daily operation and is spreading around the importance of our grazing lands. At this time, Carl and his family.
Thank you, Frances.
Thank you. Well, good afternoon. Hopefully everyone got their bellies full. Feel free to wiggle around so no one nods off. Well, I'm Kelly Abel, and together with my husband Carl and our 2 sons, Christian and William, we are here to share the story of how we are weathering the storms in a sea of grass through regenerative grazing and becoming better land stewards. We'll give you a quick overview of our sea of grass, the storms we face, how we navigate these storms through regenerative grazing and economical sustainability, and this mind shift of viewing ourselves, the producers, as grazing ecologists. This is how it all works together to navigate the challenges we continually face. So here's where we are. We're in Northeast Texas, about an hour and 45 minutes from the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex. They say we have an average annual precipitation of 46 inches. Of course, this is the one of our major storms, right, is flip-flopping from drought to mud management. We have just over 1,000 acres. We're very fortunate to have it all in one piece that we purchased over the past, in 4 stages over the past 20 years. We're 70% native grasses, and in our area, the big 4 is the big blue stem, little blue stem, Indian grass, and switchgrass. And then we've got the 30% of introduced grasses in our area, Bermuda, Bahia, Dallas grass. And we've developed good water source in all paddocks. 20 years ago, our place did not look like this. It was more like this. We were newlyweds just starting a dream. I was completely out of my element, having grown up in big cities and used to well-manicured yards. This property did not fit my dream.
And I was in trouble.
And he said, just give me 5 years. And I did, and then some. So we started with broad-based planting, and then we added 12 cows, 1 bull, and 600 goats. Flash forward. Today we keep 130 gentle mother cows and 45 sometimes unruly mother goats. And our stocking rate is about 1 animal unit to 6 acres. And now our son William is going to tell you about his specialty.
Hello. Okay. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the benefits and challenges of having goats. So I'll start with the challenges. One of the biggest challenges of having goats is parasites. The thing with parasites is that they're always there and you need to monitor your goats to make sure they don't have parasites. Also, worm them regularly to prevent them to get parasites. Also, rotationally grazing your goats will help disrupt the parasite cycle. Another challenge is the kidding season. The challenge about that is that all the mama goats are having their kids and you have to bring up the mamas to the barn, and it's just a really crazy time of year. Another challenge is fencing, because if you just have regular cow fences, that will not keep a goat in. So you have to goat-proof your fences. Another challenge is predator control. Where I live, the biggest predator that we have is the coyote, but we have fixed that problem with our guard dogs. So now I'm going to show you a video that I made that will show you the benefits of having goats.
So William, why do we have goats here on the grassland?
Well, goats are mostly browsers and cows are mostly grazers, so the goats, they can help control the brush. Another reason is goats eat lush places that in the brush that has good nutrients in it, and then they go bed down in places that usually have some dirt on them and bare ground. When they poop and pee, all those nutrients go into the ground and they help grass grow on that bare dirt. Goats bring you extra income because cows don't eat the brush and goats do. So goats bring you almost double cows bring you in price per pound.
All right, great job, William. Great job there. And I'm going to continue on as we look at the storms that we weather, right? All of us producers and grassland ecologists have to deal with a lot of challenges. And so, Mom's helping me. So I'm going to look at some of those and some possible solutions. This was a great quote. This was from the CEO of the Noble Research Institute, Steve Rhines. And it says, the world you operate in is ever changing with unstable markets, rapidly increasing fertilizer and input costs, decreasing water availability, and changing weather patterns. And these are just a few of the examples of the storms, of the conditions that we have to navigate while attempting to be profitable. Of course, the profitability part of it, as the small business operators that we all are, very important to sustaining what we're doing. Of course, I added a couple of more storms. These little guys are fast-moving storms. How many of y'all have to deal with army worms? Yeah. if you don't do anything in about a week, you're looking at bare ground, aren't you? Yeah, and it's tough. Sometimes you don't want to spray them, but they'll take everything if you don't. And then the brush, constant brush encroachment is another challenge, and that's a kind of a slow-moving storm. If you're not paying attention, it won't be long, and it'll take most of the good grass stuff you have. So we're constantly battling that storm. And we all, in Texas, some of y'all might be from like North Dakota or Montana, and y'all are laughing at us Texans because, yeah, we do that all the time, but in Texas, this is not normal. Well, we were chopping ice and no power, and it was ice on top of snow. There was no, so anyway, luckily we had a few bales in storage, about 7 or 8 years old, but we fed all of those and we're glad we had them. But for the management practices, the rotational grazing is really the cornerstone of what makes our whole program work. And it allows us a lot more opportunities. It allows us a lot more options. And it really takes care of the grassland ecology and the stewardship that go along with what we do. Yeah, and I use that term a little bit loosely. They have amp grazing and they have high intensity, but I kind of just call it rotational grazing. And the main premise is grazing it and then letting it rest. And those grasses, those prairie ecology systems evolved under that for thousands of years with the buffalo. And so they love it. The response has been nothing short of amazing. When we started, some of this ecology was not even recognizable. There were little pieces of it that were left intact, but they were so badly abused, you couldn't really recognize what was there. And in just 6 or 8 years, it just exploded. It came to life. Some of the things that we use for our rotational grazing kind of decision making, the forage type that's there, the grazing height of the forage, and the nutritional requirements of our livestock, right? We're got to be profitable, so we're watching what we're doing for our livestock as well as kind of trying to balance that with the ecology. And then we also, some other points, we try to allow some seed production to our native species. And then, of course, you've always got logistics in the mix where you might have to cross a county road or a deep creek or got baby calves to move or whatever. And then stockpiling is a huge thing because we basically eliminated having to deal with hay, the hay equipment, the hay inputs, and everything that goes with it. And that's been a tremendous boost for our bottom line. Of course, with every management style or type, there's going to be some challenges that go along with it. As a cow-calf producer, those calving season moves while we're rotationally grazing can present some challenges, as y'all probably know if y'all are doing it. And you've got to deal with proper water distribution. If you want to start cutting those pastures up so you can graze them effectively, you've got to be able to have water and to some extent shade for the cattle that are in there. And then as you go through these rotational moves, and then we're throwing different curves at us with the weather and so forth, we've got to adjust. So we're constantly evaluating what we have out there. And when I first started this management style, I thought I was pretty fair at evaluating forage, but my ability to do that has really, I feel like has really gone up, and that's really satisfying and built my awareness of the whole ecology of these systems. That just the assessment thing is very important, and to not get the stocking rate ahead of the progress of your grassland ecology. As it goes up, you can add a few, but don't get ahead of it and set yourself back. I can't emphasize enough the satisfaction and the real value in communicating with some of the great folks out there. They're either our grazing peers, there might be specialists, botanists, grazing ecologists, range specialists, but that mix of that communication with that mix of just super knowledge and just experience is vastly important to progressing your program. These are just a few slides of kind of before and after. This is the same area. That red line is the fence, and that area is the same tree. So you can see from 04 to 17 the change. And there's another one, 05, and then what it looks like in 15. And this one was one we kind of, this top picture, I got so discouraged, I wasn't sure what I was going to do. And I almost considered an introduced species, and I'm so glad I didn't. I implemented some more rotational grazing, and I used a method of trample planting to plant the seed with the cattle behind a cube feeder, or to some way condense that herd so they would trample the seed. Basically, that bottom picture is rotational grazing. That's how well it works if you give it a little time. This was a broad-based planting. This was one of our best, but the bottom picture is after. You can see the number of years that have passed, 13 years or whatever it is, rotational grazing and giving those plants what they really love. The regenerative management, the rotational grazing approach puts the producer, the land manager, in a place where he begins to view the whole process a little differently and view what his part of that or her part of that is, and looking after that resource, right? We can, if we're not careful, we can get tied up in the cattle, and I love working with the different breeds and genetics and whatever, but ultimately we are managing the resource, and that resource is the forage and really the soil health underneath that forage. And when we recognize ourselves in that position, we take a whole new approach to what we're doing, and we want to take care of that resource. This is the trample planting method that I mentioned. Really simple. You're just trying to duplicate what the buffalo did. You just have to broadcast the seed and bring the cattle through there in a very condensed manner, whether you use a cube feeder, polywire, whatever. Bring them through there 3 or 4 times, get them to stir up that organic matter in the soil and just lightly cover those seeds. And we've had, of course, like all plantings, the weather's got to be a little bit on your side, but we've had some tremendous results. This is just 2 years later. There was no Indian grass here, and we just planted the seed one time. And now I'm going to turn the mic over to my oldest son, Christian. Oh, he's got one, I'm sorry.
So I'm going to talk a little bit about prescribed burning. Prescribed burning is a good combination with herbicides. It's very good for brush control, and it boosts your forage quality in your pastures. So some things to keep in mind when doing a prescribed burn is planning, preparation, and weather are absolutely necessary. And if you've never really done a prescribed burn, you need to contact and consult with the advisors listed on the screen, as our neighbor did not do this and nearly burned down the neighboring town. So some ways we can prevent that is by making a fire break. You can use natural fire breaks such as roads, cow trails, and waterways. It saves you a lot of time. And you can disc or mode the fire breaks to improve them, and blow or rake also to improve them and make them safer. So this is a clip of me raking a fire break. This is a cow trail, another one of the natural fire breaks you can use. And also you can use a leaf blower to blow the cow trail as well. And then lastly, the fun part, which is burning them. And you can see how big the fire gets, so that's important to use a fire break when burning this amount of grass.
That's how you engage teenagers
Here's some before and after photos of some burns we did. There's one in 2014 to 2017. You can see how much brush there was in the before picture, and afterwards how much grass there was. And here's another one. You can see the biggest change here, how much brush there was before and how much grass there was afterwards.
Very good, Chris. Thank you, buddy. You did a great job. So this is a bit of our prairie. We're fortunate to have some remnant original prairie stands in our place. There would be a turn in the creek the farmer didn't quite plow, or there might be a place where they had an old hay meadow or a horse pasture. They were badly overgrazed. And again, in just 6 or 8 years, you can see what the rotational grazing did. This ecology was hardly recognizable when we first started. And with the regenerative management practice and rotational grazing, it offers some fantastic sustainable economics for these programs, and that's how we're going to keep this all going. Of course, you need to do some other management practices. We generally get 90% on our calf crop, and we do that with no hay. And so our economics have become really strong. This is on the left, the gray area is the table that shows all of our actual figures on what we spend to raise those cows, to keep those cows. There's taxes, there's insurance, everything's in there except deeded land cost. But everything else is in there. The top right graph, the blue bars, was put out by the Livestock Marketing Information Center. And they're showing the average for the Southern Plains cattle producers, the average to keep a cow for a year is $830. And we all know what a calf brings, and we all know 90% calf crop is pretty darn good. So it doesn't take you long to figure out. Most of us in the cattle business are not making any money at that level hardly. And in 3 years, they're talking over $900 for the average cost to keep a cow. Using these native grass stockpile methods with a supplement and avoiding having to use hay, we're doing it for about $345 a year to keep a cow, and a goat is probably somewhere around $90 a year.
You got 2 minutes.
One of the biggest things in my program is making sure that mama cow is getting what she needs. I'm constantly monitoring what kind of body condition she's in. She's got to be in a 5 or better when she goes into calving so she can breed back, and I can get the same good calf crop the next year. And I started looking at that mama cow's condition really serious about September the 1st. And some people in my area will tell me my cows are too fat in December, but I never have they might be, but by February, they're not. So that doesn't concern me to have them a little too fat, but that's what I try to shoot for. They're not all a 7 by December, but they need to be a good, healthy body score. And again, regenerative grazing practices, the rotational practices, offer some really good economics. That's paramount to what we're all doing. And for years, of course, some of us that have been along this path for a while, remember, and I'm telling on myself, 30 years ago, you put an ecologist and a livestock grazer in the same room, that was pretty tough. Those two are closer than most of us think oftentimes. That's the same job, and as we both began to embrace what we each sort of do, those two can come together and work beautifully. They go hand in hand. And of course, to try to spread some of that stewardship information, grazing practices, we do a lot of field days. It's a lot of fun. It's just great to get a bunch of people together, discuss some ideas, questions, and trade information, what you have. It's a lot of fun, really a lot of fun.
And as we all know, it's about planting seeds in our future land stewards, to play, to explore, and to show the infinite possibilities in agriculture and natural resources. We invite local schools out, the 4-H groups, the boys' friends, extended family for fun runs, for campouts. We partner with AgriLife and Texas Parks and Wildlife, the NRCS. Each spring, we host an Exploring Ecosystems where kids can get out, do hands-on activities to explore the grasslands ecology, the pond ecology, and most importantly, just to have fun in this sacred space of the tall grass prairie. And we end on the why. We all ask ourselves, why do we do what we do? Why did we choose this lifestyle? And it's for our boys, it's for our family. We weather the storms because of who we are and our family. And so we do that through the regenerative grazing and stewardship, and we are making waves. Thank you.
Thank you all so much. Right now, we have time for a few questions. Are there any questions? Yes, please.
Carl and Kelly, as you look at your history on this property, if you were going to talk to a new producer, what are the shortcuts? What are the things that you'd say if you went back and started over, what would you do differently than what you did?
I would probably say when we started, now this is of course 20 years ago almost, the expertise or the level of understanding for starting some of these native grass projects, planting projects, they didn't have the knowledge they have today. They have some really good protocols for being more successful than we were when we started planting. So I think your chances of success using what they have today, knowing how to treat that ground before you start planting, you can be much more successful. It's not quite the journey probably that we were on. So that's an encouragement. If I was going to start again, I would feel better about being more successful quicker, right? And it's not, I mean, rotational grazing is the cornerstone. Yeah, and you can start grazing some of these systems pretty quick after you planted them.
Okay.
Do your guard dogs stay with your sheep and cattle, and did you raise them yourself?
Yes, we've had, through the years, I think we've had 9 or 10 different dogs. Some of them have 8. I mean, they just died at 13, 14 years old. So we basically train them all ourselves. And they stay with the goats 24/7. We tried running the goats and cattle kind of in the same pasture. You can, and they will naturally kind of separate. But you can see a calf through the fence if the dogs get excited, or you can see. So we generally run them separate. But we have some bottle babies. William is an expert. If there's one of them that needs attention, this guy can get them to suck the bottle and raise them. But they're dumber than a wedge. I mean, you put them out there in that pasture, you think, they're never going to come back because it's pretty good sized pastures. And they always come back. Those dogs take care of them.
Okay.
I've had the privilege to visit your place with the NRCS, so it's really a nice place.
Thank you.
But, you know, you say you don't use hay, so December to February, are you increasing your range? I cottonseed, you use that 38%
Yes, sir.
cottonseed?
Yes,
So
sir.
that goes up?
Yes, sir.
What else do you use? I'm assuming all your grass is dead.
Yeah,
Right,
it's
yeah.
just stockpile forage. The Bermuda will last till about, this year it's gonna last till the end of December, easy.
Right.
Most years, 10th or so of December, it's getting pretty rough. And then, of course, those natives stay up and usable much longer than some of our introduced species do. So that's what I try to save as I go past December and into January and February. I save my native stuff, and I just use those supplements. Those 38s for your money on protein, I've penciled it out all kind of ways, and those 38% cubes are just hard to beat for the value.
Okay. Thank you all so much. Let's give them another round of applause. And should you have any other questions, please feel free to talk with them after the session or if you meet them out in the hallway.